Hi guys, today I want to discuss the latest discoveries of the underground caves at the ancient city Petra, right in front of the iconic rock building, the Treasury. Interestingly, the media focus on the information that has been known for decades, but overlooked the real new exciting findings. Maybe because this new finding would further challenge the established narrative of Petra's age and creation. In October 2024, the Discovery Channel's program Excavation Unknown aired a two-part episode about a tomb in Petra containing 12 human skeletons. In the show, it was hailed as perhaps the most significant tomb ever found at Petra. But experts are unimpressed, since two earlier excavations in 2003 and 2005 on these tombs already uncovered over a dozen human remains and funerary goods. For example, Tomb 62C, located beneath the Treasury, contained the remains of at least 11 individuals. Some question if the discovery at Petra show was entirely staged. Putting the controversy aside, certain recent published studies did offer valuable new information and insights into the underground caves by the Treasury, which I'll present in this video. I'll also offer my thoughts on what these findings might indicate and how that could change our view of Petra's history. El Khazna, aka the Treasury, is approximately 39 to 40 meters, 128 to 131 feet high, equivalent to a 10-story building. Per mainstream archaeologists, this rock-cut monument was carved by the Nabateans in the 1st century CE. In 2022, I made a video highlighting the often ignored 5 subterranean cave tombs under the Treasury, which referenced the 2003 excavation report. Petra is an expansive, hilly site, most famous for its magnificent rock-cut facades and massive caves. But what we see today is just a fraction of the ancient city. Archaeologists have only excavated 15 to 20% of Petra, meaning the vast majority remains buried and hidden underground. How did the city get buried so deep? It has a lot to do with millennia-long flash flood runoff accumulations. Petra is in a desert, which is vulnerable to flash floods that can occur every couple of years, though the frequencies can vary. While not extremely frequent, these events can be sudden and severe. To mitigate flash floods, Petra used to have a highly sophisticated water system to control and collect rainwater. The system included rock-cut channels, dams, cisterns, and water conduits. It not only provided precious water for the locals, but also prevented floods from damaging the rock-hewn city by diverting them. For example, there used to be a dam at the entrance of the Sig to block floods. Meanwhile, the water was diverted through the channel Wadi Mathlam, which is also called the Little Sig. If the dam at the Sig entrance was intact, and the Little Sig tunnel was properly maintained, there would have been little to no floods coming down the Sig, and the tombs under the Treasury and the street of facades would not have been buried. The significant sediment that built up over time and buried many areas of Petra indicates the water system must have failed a really long time ago. It's believed that the water system was established contemporaneously with the carving of numerous large-scale caves at Petra. The water system was the most important utility line in Petra and essential to the livelihood of its ancient desert inhabitants, who would have planned and created this system with the excavation of the big caves. Only a sophisticated culture would have been able to excavate these enormous caves that still have not collapsed after 2,000 years, or to strategically plan, design, and meticulously execute the complex, extensive water drainage system in Petra. Archaeologists told us that the Nabateans created both, yet I have some legit suspicions to the contrary. Ancient Greek historian Diodorus Siculus from the 1st century BC wrote that the Nabateans had no permanent houses and lived in the open air. If so, then why did they carve the rock city of Petra? Comparable to our modern utility supplies, an intricate and critical system like this ancient one requires regular checkups and maintenance. Without proper maintenance, Petra's water system crumbled over time. Dams collapsed, conduits and tunnels clogged, and cisterns filled with sediment and mud. This engineering feat no longer diverted floods away from the caves or properly irrigated the site. Floods flowed down the Sig, the outer Sig, to the valley and left meters of sediments along the way. This is why the majority of the city is buried underground. How long ago did this happen? If we can determine when the water system failed by examining the flood sediments, we may figure out the real age and perhaps the true creators of Petra. For this reason, I read the excavation reports to seek clues on the sediment layers and buried structures. Decades ago, 5 rock-cut caves were discovered along and under the Treasury's platform. On the opposite side of the Treasury, 2 more buried tombs were excavated on the eastern Kupfa cliff. The 4 tombs right in front of the Treasury are approximately 6 meters, or 19.7 feet lower than the current surface. Tomb 62A on the far right side of the Treasury is 7 meters, or 23 feet beneath the ground. All the tomb's entrances are under the Roman-era courtyard, which is currently buried. Archaeologists deemed Tomb 62A the oldest, based on the style of pottery recovered on site dating to the 1st century BC. On the opposite side, Tomb 64A is also buried 7 meters below. Since 62A and 64A are both 7 meters under the surface, they likely date to the same era. These cave tombs have thick layers of flood sediments, even though their doors were blocked off with stone blocks in ancient times. Human bones, grave goods such as pottery shards, were unearthed in sediment layers, which date to the Nabatean period, specifically between approximately 100 BC and 100 CE. This time frame corresponds with the peak of the Nabatean kingdom, before the Romans annexed the city in 106 CE. Researchers propose that the tombs in front of the Treasury slightly predate the carving of the Treasury. All these monuments, the tombs, the Treasury, and other gigantic cave structures such as the urn tomb, the royal tombs, and the monastery were completed within a period of 40 years. During the reign of Aridas IV, the longest ruling monarch of Nabatea. During his time, there were construction projects throughout the Nabatean kingdom, especially at Petra and Hegra, where tombs date to between 1 BC to 75 CE. Petra flourished in the 1st century CE, and its population peaked at an estimated 20,000 inhabitants. Did 20,000 Nabateans really need these many mammoth monuments? Did they even have enough manpower to undertake these large-scale projects? In a prior video, I showed side-by-side comparison photos of rock-cut facades of the 2 main Nabatean cities, Petra and Hegra. Petra's rock structures are significantly larger, more ornate and refined than Hegra's. Hegra's tombs display hand tool marks, but Petra's largest monuments showcase incredible machine-like uniformed markings. Were the Nabateans truly capable of doing this? If the 2 places were excavated during the same time under the same king's order, why are the end products so different in scale and craftsmanship? In the excavation reports, researchers stated that the tombs and all the huge caves were carved within 40 years, and the last phase of the construction of the treasury area occurred in the Roman era after 106 CE, represented by paved courtyards at the treasury and a central staircase. However, the sediment layers and other evidence tell a very different story. Limestone fragments were found in the lowest and earliest sediment stratum inside the oldest tomb 62A. Petra is known for its red sandstone. Limestone is a foreign material brought in by the Romans to pave the Sig and the treasury courtyard. The tombs at the treasury are not on the same elevation level, and the Roman limestone courtyard is about 1.5 to 2.5 meters, or 5 feet to 6.5 feet above the entrances of the tombs. This means when Romans arrived at Petra at 106 CE, there was already 2 meters, or over 6 feet of sediment accumulated at Petra's plaza, covering up the bottoms of the tombs. Because the sediment was hard, compact, and very difficult to excavate. Instead of removing all the sediment, the Romans only added steps to the lower caves for access, leveled existing sediment, and then placed limestone pavers on top. If the Nabateans were really the creators of Petra monuments, dams, and drainage channels, then they should have had the knowledge and means to maintain their water system, and there should not have been over 2 meters of sediment in front of the treasury blocking the entrances of the noblemen's tombs, especially when these sites were presumably carved at the peak of the Nabatean kingdom, when its populace was thriving and affluent. How is this possible? The Nabateans were able to finish the lower tombs, the grand treasury, and other impressive caves within 40 years, but they did not bother to clean and maintain their drainage system, which was crucial to their rock-cut city and burial ground. It doesn't make sense. Why didn't the Nabateans take care of their water system to prevent their ancestors' tombs from getting flooded? Besides, if the treasury was carved shortly after the tombs within a 40-year period, then people should have noticed flood and deposit issues during this time. Why did the Nabateans go ahead and spend tremendous effort and resources to carve the important treasury in an area with known flood problems? All this is leading to the point that the Nabateans were not the creators of the Petra water system, as they did not know how to repair or maintain it. Consequently, the largest caves with machine-like markings like the treasury and the urn tomb probably did not come from the Nabateans either. Some might bring up the terracotta drainage pipes at the Petra Museum, but they do not sufficiently prove that the Nabateans excavated the rock-cut water system. Water was initially transported to Petra through rock-cut channels. By the 1st century BC, the Nabateans made simple long pottery pipes. The pipes were added later and might even have been the Roman work, because ancient Romans extensively used terracotta drainage pipes for their water and sewage systems from 2nd century BC to 2nd century CE, during the time they annexed Petra. Back to the sediment in front of the treasury. There are about 1.5 to 2.5 meters of sediments below the Roman limestone courtyard and 3.5 to 4.5 meters of sediments above the courtyard. Romans began building structures at Petra shortly after they annexed the city in 106 CE. The paving of the Sig and the treasury courtyard were likely their first projects, which means the courtyard can act as a relatively accurate timestamp. This signifies the 3.5 to 4.5 meters of sediment above the courtyard represent about 1900 years of debris accumulation, counting from 106 CE till the 2005 excavation. On average, each year, less than 0.1 inch, 1.84 to 2.37 millimeters of sediment was accumulated. Based on this rate, the 1.5 to 2.5 meter thick sediment below the Roman courtyard would have taken 630 to 1,360 years to accumulate. That's bizarre, because the Nabateans only arrived at Petra at 4th century BC. The tombs featured Nabatean-styled column capitals and herringbone-like tool marks, and contain Nabatean-era skeletons and potteries, which confirm their Nabatean origin. Then how did the sediments accumulate so fast after the Nabateans carved their tombs by the treasury? Within 500 years, the treasury plaza gathered sediments that should have amassed for 1,000 years. And don't forget the other anomaly. In the chamber of the oldest tomb 62A, Roman-time limestone fragments were mixed in the lowest sediment layer. The same thing exists in 64A, the other tomb that is also buried 7 meters or 23 feet below. How did limestone pieces of Roman times show up at the earliest sediment layer of the Nabatean tombs dated to the 1st century BC? These strange excavation results can potentially be explained by the latest 2024 discovery at the Treasury. This new discovery, in my opinion, should have been the bigger news than the hyped 12 skeletons, which is that the ERT survey, electrical resistivity tomography, conducted inside the excavated tombs, 62D and E, found that there is another row of caves below, there are essentially identical geophysical signatures to the 5 treasury site tombs. Some of you might remember that in my 2022 video on tombs under the Treasury, I posited the possibility that there might have been another row of ancient structures beneath the Treasury's facade. Now my hypothesis has been proven. Here is the ERT graph. Red color means areas with high resistivity, aka voids, cavities, or caves. White or blank show zones of low resistivity. The deeper underground caves in red protrude further out from the Treasury's rock cliff. The paper provided a short discussion stating that this figure could indicate the presence of other structures on the sides and in front of the monument, and an internal clearing to them. I took a closer look and found something interesting. ERT can often differentiate between air-filled voids, natural rock, and sediment-filled voids due to their distinct resistivity ranges. Air-filled voids such as caves show extremely high resistivity represented here in red. Solid bedrock show moderate to high depending on the rock type. Moderate resistivity is in green and yellow. White signals low resistivity, meaning wet silt or saturated soil, while sediment-filled voids have low resistivity compared to air-filled voids and often the surrounding rock, depending entirely on the type of sediments and its water saturation. The paper did not specify these factors, so I have to make an educated guess. Here is what I think. There may have been more stone caves in the middle of the open plaza within the natural sandstone bedrock, which cut the plaza into 2 parts. One part is close to the Treasury, and the other part is linking the SIG, which might have functioned as a flood control area, separating the Treasury and the tombs from flash floods. There is a narrow rock gate connecting the SIG-side plaza to the Treasury opening. The north region appears to have some major cave configuration, comparable to the size of the Treasury's chambers. The open area in front of the Treasury used to be much smaller and not directly attached to the SIG. The 2 plaza layout shielded the Treasury from potential floods that flowed through the SIG and provided further flood protection, thereby highly likely a purposeful design. By the way, the ERT only tested about 6 meters or 20 feet underground. It's not entirely unthinkable that there might be more structures buried even deeper. Only further exploration will tell. Now, how does this new finding explain the questions I raised earlier? Since there is another row of caves down below, the 5 tombs 62A to E on the Treasury side used to be much higher on the cliff. The lower caves protrude out like lower steps, similar to what we see in the street of facade of Petra. The Nabateans carved the upper row of caves as tombs. They might have created lower caves too, which I conjecture were also higher than the then ground level. During the time these caves were excavated, the lower rock cliffs were exposed and had not been buried by flood sediment. Even after the water system failed and the SIG dam collapsed, earlier floods could not have reached up to these higher caves. But as time goes on, the accumulation of sediment gradually inundated the bottom row of caves and eventually became thick enough to flood the upper tombs close to the Treasury. That happened around the time of the Roman annex at 106 CE. Since Petra has a desert climate, when the Romans arrived at Petra, at first they might not have known about the flash flood situation and paved the SIG pathway with limestone. Later, their paved road on the SIG got damaged by floods. Broken limestone fragments got carried away by water and drifted into the exposed tombs like 62A in the Treasury Plaza. This is why the bottom stratum inside the 1st century BC tombs contains the Roman-era limestone cobbles mixed with earlier pottery, because only then the accumulated sediment layer in the plaza became thick enough to reach higher to these upper caves. As for how the sediments below the Roman courtyard grew so fast, that's because the open area in front of the Treasury used to be much smaller. When the Nabateans carved their tombs by the Treasury, there might have been other cave structures surrounding them. With the same volume of sediment debris, Smaller floor area would result in higher height. If the open area by the Treasury used to be half the size, then the sediment would have piled up twice as fast. It's quite difficult to remove the thick layer of compact sediment, and unfortunately, the research team who excavated tombs 62C and 64A in 2005 commented that although they were confident that there are features or tombs at the same level as tomb 62A, these will not be excavated in order to preserve the remains and features of the lower Roman courtyard. Well, I sure hope these archaeologists will change their mind and do more excavations here, because according to the ERT survey, there's certainly a lot more to be uncovered. Okay, what have we learned today? 6 meters or 20 feet below the Treasury are buried a row of Nabatean cave tombs. Below them, there is another row of even deeper caves. There are potentially many more cave structures and rock forms under the center and around the Treasury Plaza. These caves became buried due to millennia-long flood sediment deposition. The Nabateans did not maintain the rock-cut drainage system even during their peak, which implies they were not the creators of Petra's water system or the largest monuments which contain machine marks. These advanced engineering projects are likely pre-existing. When the Nabateans migrated to Petra, the old water system already failed and infrequent flooding went through the Sig towards the Treasury. Back then, the sediments in Petra canyons had not been as high, thus many more rock cliffs were exposed. The Nabateans carved cave tombs on lower rock cliffs by the Treasury, which subsequently got buried by flood sediments. Then the Romans occupied Petra and left a reliable timestamp of limestone pieces in the sediment layers. The unforgiving desert floods later damaged and buried the Roman pavements and courtyard. At the end, we have this big open plaza in front of the Treasury full of sediment, which tourists understandably ignore. Little do they know, there remains fascinating secrets buried underneath, yet to be revealed. If you have any insights, please make a comment. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and share with others. You can also support me on Patreon, which is a monthly charge, or on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.